As we welcome you to this edition of The Right Stand, I'm coming to you live from right at Vijay Chowk with the beautiful Rashtrapati Bhavan that looks fantastic right behind me in the background, ladies and gentlemen. But some good news to share with you on the eve of Raksha Bandhan and also on the day of Onam. And let's start with all that is happening all around us, which should bring us a lot of cheer. If the LPG prices were a constant worry and there were increasing complaints that many families may fall off the Ujjwala bandwagon because they are not able to buy these cylinders again or refill the cylinders because of the rising costs, the government has announced a 200 rupees rebate or a subsidy per cylinder. That's the big announcement that's come from the Prime Minister. And the idea, the Prime Minister said, is to spread happiness and cheer. They have also given the nod to another additional 75 lakh Ujjwala connections. So nearly 10 crore plus beneficiaries across the country, close to nearly 1.75 crore beneficiaries in Uttar Pradesh alone, as hailed by Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. So there are many homes that should be smiling on this very, very festive day and the festive week ahead, given Raksha Bandhan right around the corner. The other big news and perhaps news to cheer is the fact that the first electrified flex fuel car is now on the roads in our country, with Union Minister Nitin Gadkari unveiling this. He was the first to drive around in a hydrogen powered car, but he says that we have got to look at green hydrogen and not at black hydrogen, or that comes because of non-renewable fuels. We need to look at green hydrogen, but this is 100% fuel, that is ethanol fueled car that is currently on the roads. It's a prototype vehicle that has been launched by Toyota. It's the Innova model which we've seen, but it's an electrified fuel that it's going to be using, and the fuel is 100% ethanol. So big boon, bonanza, if this works in India, to also the sugarcane growers, because ethanol manufacturing consumes a lot of sugarcane, and for the sugarcane growers this is great news. So not 10%, 20%, but 100% ethanol. And finally, of course, the World Cup runner-up and the 18-year-old sensation. He just turned 18 on the 10th of August this year, and soon after was up against Magnus and Carlsen. He lost out there, but he is a hero for all of us. So Pragnananda will be returning. He will be back home, but we're given to understand, and we will play out that conversation that I've had with his coach sometime here on the network very, very soon. But the hint is that there is no time for celebration. He's just going to be busy playing tournaments over the next 2 months. But it's a touchdown quick back home and then flying out again the very next day or the day after. That's what we know. But Prags, we love you, and we'd like you, Gukesh, and many others to do fantastic work like you are doing and become world champion very, very soon. We need to dominate the chessboard, the game of 64 squares, and it's all up to you, boys and girls. So great news, and we'll start this edition of The Right Stand on this positive note, but quickly shifting focus to the big story, the big exclusive that we have here at CNN News 18 on The Right Stand. And this is with the K gangs that are afoot. Well, 2 days after Pro-Khalistan groups or slogans had appeared at multiple metro stations and spots in the national capital, including the Shivaji Park, Madipur, Paschim Vihar, Udyog Nagar, the Maharaja Surajmal Stadium, and some other places. Top sources within the security establishment are revealing that these K groups are misusing, the K groups or vested interests who are operating from outside our soil are actually using or misusing Sikh youth for pushing in anti-national propaganda. This is no organized group. We are given to understand. The investigations have found that the painting or graffiti are not part of an organized group. Our group editor security, Manoj Gupta, getting us these details. Let's try and break it down for you, how this entire modus operandi is. Now, one interesting part as we get into it, ladies and gentlemen, what was manifest in Australia, what was manifest in the UK, what was manifest on display in Canada is now being practiced or being tried to being attempted in India itself, in Delhi, just to give some kind of wind and some kind of activity to this entire failed attempt by these K gangs, and they've all been scuttled there. So they're trying to do this here. Why? And this is in the build-up to the G20. So I think we need to have some pragmatism there and understand that these units are all activating themselves just to create a certain kind of mahal and drag a certain kind of negative attention towards India. But this is a failed attempt, and we'll tell you why. This is the input that we have. Intel sources revealed to News 18 that anti-national graffiti is the handiwork of misled youth, Sikh youth. Khalistani groups are identifying youth who look and they try and find out these people on social media who may be slightly in a mode looking for certain kind of content. Then they are cultivated, they are radicalized, and then they are encouraged. They are mainly born after 1984, and they are in the grip of these pro-Khalistan outfits which use that 84 narrative wrongly, and they try and erase the entire history of Sikhi in India and how it came and its contribution towards keeping India safe. All of that is erased, and then it's just this brainwashing of a particular narrative. They start radicalizing them with their agenda, and by painting a picture that Sikhs in India are oppressed, which is far from reality. So, but that's what they're painted. They're given a radicalized picture of Operation Blue Star and the 84 massacre. K groups ask these groups then that go ahead and paint walls and put up these flags just to create a certain kind of drama and attention. And what happens is they do this in the lure of money. They are promised anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000 for every flag or every graffiti that is put, or the video that they post, and then it gets circulated. But what happens the moment they are removed? The flags are removed, the graffiti is removed, cops are swinging into action, there is no outright support for all of this. So then these youth are said, ki bhai, tumko kaha tha lagao, tumne nahi lagaya, to utar gaya, now we will not pay you the money. So this is also a modus operandi. They lure them in and then they hang them out to dry there. And what's happening? These youth are captured. These youth are caught on CCTV cameras, or there is intel human that points to them, and then they have FIRs lodged against them. Then they are already blacklisted and they are seen as criminals. So this is what they are doing. They're corrupting the minds, and then they are very clearly putting the future of these youth in jeopardy. The other thing, CNN News 18 had, and here on the right stand also we had earlier reported how there are no takers for extremist agenda, and the rise of these extremist fringe pro-Khalistan ideologies and these elements is creating a negative impact on Sikhs across the world. And what's happening is that Sikhs who want to speak out, they are also being pressured, they are being bullied by these fringe elements, they are being forced into being quiet, because if they speak out then they are selectively targeted. They are targeted with cuss words, with a lot of invectives, conjecture, and then they are also threatened. So all of these things happen. Intel source revealed that the moderates feel that they are not seen respectfully by host countries also, where they are staying in. The entire Sikh community is getting a bad name, and the community feels they are losing respect due to separatist radical approach. Sikh groups feel that they are known for their hospitality, charity, and this is all being marred by this vandalism, gundagardi, and this violence that's on display by these fringe elements, these K gangs. The alleged leaders only speak of separation and have no association with Guru Granth Sahib. A lot of these people who are saying that they're doing it for Sikhi don't even practice Sikhism properly. They don't even follow the tenets of Sikhi, the 5 basic tenets that have been mandated by the Gurus. They don't follow that either, but all they do is rabble rouse and radicalize. Sense of leadership void among Sikhs in UK, USA, Germany, France and Canada, and that makes them very easy prey for these elements. They say that Sikhs in other parts of the globe are harassed or threatened by aggressive Sikh activists. Many Sikh groups feel this Khalistan issue is being blown out of proportion in India. It does not have legs. But more importantly, the right minds, the moderates, those who have nothing to do with it, this is the big majority. They are forced into silence because their own families are targeted, their shops are vandalized, their businesses are hurt. These fringe elements get very emboldened, and that is something we need to really act against. And this is not, they should not get the kind of voice and traction that they're getting. But this is a full racket. This is the modus operandi stands exposed. Let's go across to our guests who are joining us this evening. We have Puneet Sani, activist, joining us. We also have Kuldeep Singh, director MATV. But first I'd like to say Namaste, Jai Hind, and go straight across to Jaswant Singh Thekedar, the Prabandhak, Gurdwara Miri Piri in London. Namaste, gentlemen. Thank you very much. But Jaswant Singh ji, let me ask you, how can this be countered? Because whenever I speak about this, or whenever we raise this, the counter question comes is, where is the Akal Takht? Where are the gurus? Where are the jathedars? Where are the big voices from the community? Why are they not condemning these actions? And that's the reason why these K gangs are getting emboldened. Sir, your point of view.
एक SFJ एक गुंडा ग्रुप है, ये हायर करके पैसे दे के लोगों तो काम कराते हैं। कोई भी खालिस्तान की लहर या आज़ादी की लहर इदां दे पैसे मनी दे के लोगों को फसाउंदी नहीं। पंजाब विच 200-250 नौजवान इन्हां दे कहण दे उत्ते उन्हां दे केस रजिस्टर हो चुके ने, और जिन्ना चिर सरकार इन्हां नूं SFJ नूं नहीं हत्थ पाउंदी उन्नी देर कुछ नहीं होना। सरकार बहुत लाइटली इन्हां नूं लै रही है और इन्हां नूं गुआंढी देश सपोर्ट कर दिया वा। ये पैसों का लालच दिंदे ने, पैसे दिंदे किसी नूं नहीं, और उहदे नाल जिहड़े आ गरीब लोग आ वो मार खाण डए आ। और ये बंदा जिहड़ा ना ये आप सिੱਖਿਆ ना इहनूं सिੱਖੀ दा पता वा। जिहड़े साडे जथेदार ने जां होर जथेबंदियां ने वो इन्हां तो डरदियां ने, वो कुछ कहण नूं तैयार नहीं है।
पर क्या आप ये मानेंगे जसवंत सिंह जी, मैं बहुत कि कई बार ये एलिगेशंस लगते हैं कि गुरुद्वारों में भी ऐसी बातें होती हैं, क्या ये सही है? या फिर कम्युनिटी में क्या इन बच्चों को समझाया जाता है? ये बच्चे छोटी नंबर्स में हैं या ये बहुत बड़े नंबर्स में हैं, ज़रा हमें बताइए।
ये गुरुद्वारे कोई एक अद्धा होएगा जी जिथे इन्हां दा अपना कब्जा उत्थे गल हो सकती है। आम गुरुद्वारे में इदां दी कोई गल नहीं हैगी, पर ये बड़े थोड़े जे ने। पर जिवें ना एक कह लो गंदी मच्छी तलाऽ च सुੱਟ दिओ तो सारे तलाऽ नूं गंदा कर दिंदी है। ये वो हिसाब है। ये थोड़ी लोग ने, ज़्यादा लोग नहीं, पर इन्हां नूं जिन्ना चिर कंट्रोल ना किया गया, जिन्ना चिर इन्हां दे खिलाफ पूरा प्रचार ना किया गया, उन्नी देर ये सूत नहीं होना। गुरुद्वारे में इदां दा कोई कैंप नहीं लगता, गुरुद्वारे वाले कोई इन्हां नूं सपोर्ट नहीं करते। पर ये एक दो गुरुद्वारे जिथे ये काबज ने, और ये पैसा कित्थों आ रहा है इन्हां नूं ये रब जाने। ये तो सरकार ही पता कर सकती है कितों करोड़ों के हिसाब का पैसा खर्चते हैं। इन्हां दा अपना इत्थे एक TV चैनल भी हैगा जिथे दिन रात ये प्रचार करते हैं। जिन्ना चिर 2-4 चैनल इन्हां दे गलत कामां दा जवाब ना देंगे रेगुलर, एक दिन नहीं रेगुलर, उन्नी देर ये पिछे नहीं हटना।
पर क्या इनके माँ बाप को ये पता भी होता है कि ये लड़के ऐसा सब कर रहे हैं?
जिहड़े माँ बाप है वो ये सोचते हैं कि ये सिक्खी वाले बंदे जाते हैं, क्योंकि बाहर के देशों में जिहड़ी सिक्खी है पहले नालों बड़ी प्रफुल्लित हुई है। ये गल सानूं मान लैनी चाहिए है। जिहड़े बच्चे साडे जिहड़े पहले क्लीन शेव होंदे ही हुण सिख बन रहे हैं, पर उन्हां नूं गुमराह किया जा रहा। ये गुमराह जिहड़ा होण डए ने बच्चे, वो कला इत्थे पैसे की गल नहीं हैगी, पर पंजाब या हिंदुस्तान च ये पैसे का लालच दिता जाता। इत्थे पैसे का नहीं, इत्थे गलत प्रचार का लालच दिता जाता। एवरी टाइम ये एंटी इंडियन या एंटी स्लोगन ये कोई ना कोई ला के काम करते हैं, जिन्हें रोकना चाहिए।
कुलदीप सिंह जी, ये एंड पुनीत, आई विल कम टू यू आफ्टर दैट। कुलदीप सिंह जी, जो जसवंत सिंह जी कह रहे हैं, डू यू एग्री, डिसएग्री? And why is it that we are seeing the same format being adopted across multiple continents and multiple countries, and it's a similar format that's now being tried in Delhi?
Anand, thanks for having me on the show, but well, what he has said is absolutely correct. It's a small number of people. There are not too many people who are involved in this Khalistani, so-called Khalistani movement. In fact, there is no Khalistani movement. It's just a miscreant story. One single person sitting in US, I'm speaking about Pannu, Gurpatwan Singh Pannu, is being funded by somebody to create this ruckus in India, Canada, England, and to some extent in Germany now. But the whole story is they don't have any idea. they don't want to sit with the real people. They don't want to talk to the real people. They don't want to meet genuine people. What they are doing is they are just playing a game. Let us put this on the wall and let's see the impact. Put that on the wall and let us see the impact. See, they did the similar thing, and it's all these boys which are doing this are just paid a small amount of money to start with, and then promised a moon, but that moon doesn't come up. See, somebody was recently offered around, I think, over $1 million to put a flag on the Red Fort. So somebody, a friend of mine, wrote back that, okay, why don't you do it and take that billion yourself? So it is the same story. They have nothing concrete as a plan. It's a mischievous game against the government of India. Government of India should take cognizance and get rid of these kind of factors like Pannu. Pannu has some people in UK also. Pannu has some people in Canada also, and this is what they do. They go to the temples, desecrate temples. They go to the walls of the High Commission, write something there. They go to our Consul General's offices, residences. See, there was a case in San Francisco. They tried to burn the consulate, but it was just a mischievous act. It wasn't very great kind of serious issue, but yes, it is. What they are trying to do is create some news so that they remain in news, and their bosses somewhere sitting. I think it's Pakistani intelligence which is controlling them. So it is to appease their bosses in Pakistan, so that they know that our boys are doing some good work, some hard work, and disturbing the peace in India. So it has got only a social media impact plus a bit of impact on media. Otherwise, not a single Sikh is in their favor. A good Sikh never gets into these kind of scenarios. He is pro-India, he is very positive, and I meet a lot of Sikh community people in this country also, and I've never seen a person from UK, normal, who's talking in this kind of sense, what they are trying to create. So,
but Jaswant Singh ji, before I bring in, now Kuldeep Singh ji, just allow me to go back to Jaswant Singh ji and ask this before I go bring in Puneet. Puneet, thank you for your patience. But Jaswant Singh ji, when we saw what happened with the consulate, the High Commission in London, what was done after that? उसके बाद क्या मजम्मत हुई थी, क्या कम्युनिटी के अंदर क्या मैसेजिंग गई थी? क्योंकि वो लोग तो वहाँ दिन दहाड़े ब्रिटिश हाई कमीशन में भारत के जो दूतावास में जो उन्होंने किया लंदन में, उसके बाद क्या करेक्टिव एक्शन लिया गया जी?
ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਮ ਜਨਤਾ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਬੜਾ ਗਲਤ ਫੀਲ ਕਰਦੀ ਆ, ਪਰ ਇੱਕ ਗੱਲ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਲੀਅਰ ਦੱਸ ਦਿਆਂ, ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਦੋ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਨਾਲ ਜਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਦੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਕਰਨ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਠੀਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣੇ। ਜਿੰਨਾ ਚਿਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਪੂਰੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬੈਕਗਰਾਉਂਡ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੱਸੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਸੀਰੀਅਲ ਬਣਨ, ਫਿਲਮਾਂ ਬਣਨ, ਕਿਉਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਮ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਦਾ। ਆਮ ਲੋਕੀ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਆ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਲਈ ਫਾਈਟ ਕਰਨ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਪਰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੱਸਦੇ ਆ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਲਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਫਾਈਟ ਕਰਦੇ, ਇਹ ਪੈਸੇ ਲਈ ਫਾਈਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ। ਇਹ 1000 ਖਰਚ ਕੇ 50000 ਲੈਂਦੇ ਨੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਇਹ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਦਾ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਗਰੁੱਪ, ਜਿੰਨਾ ਚਿਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਜੋ ਇਹ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ, ਉਨੀ ਦੇਰ ਇਹ ਰੋਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਦੇ। ਇਹ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਨੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਹਰ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਅੱਧਾ ਸੀਰੀਅਲ ਆਏ, ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ 2 4 6 ਮਹੀਨੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਫਿਲਮ ਆਏ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਸਟੇਟਸ ਕੀ ਆ, ਇਹ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਕੀ ਆ, ਇਹ ਕਰਦੇ ਕੀ ਆ, ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਸਗਾਈਡ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, ਨੌਜਵਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਰਗਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਵਾ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਲ ਪੈਸਾ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਆਉਂਦਾ, ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਲੁੱਟਦੇ ਆ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬੈਕਗਰਾਉਂਡ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਜਥੇਬੰਦੀ ਜਾਂ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਦੇਸ਼ ਕਰਦਾ ਵਾ। ਜਿੰਨਾ ਚਿਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਾ ਐਕਸਪੋਜ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ, ਉਨੀ ਦੇਰ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਠੀਕ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ। ਇਹ ਕੋਈ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਣਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੀਏ, ਇਹਨੇ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣਨੀ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਚਾਰ ਦਾ ਕਰੋੜਾਂ ਦਾ ਬਜਟ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਸਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਜਥੇਬੰਦੀਆਂ ਜਾਂ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਜਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਦੀ ਆ ਕਿਤੇ 6 ਮਹੀਨਿਆਂ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ, ਇਹਨੇ ਨਾਲ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫਰਕ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੈਂਦਾ
ਜੀ। Puneet, your point of view, because ये double-edged sword हो गया ना, it becomes a double-edged sword. If these youth are misled and then you got FIRs against them, they are promised money, they're not even explained about history, they come here and then they do it. but then their career is then blackened because they are all part of the blacklist. एक FIR दर्ज हो गई, arrest दर्ज हो गया, तो कई जगह आपको नौकरियां नहीं मिलेंगी. You will always be seen with a particular from a particular lens that further pushes them into the abyss. So it's a double-edged sword. How does one deal with this?
So, Namaste Anand, thank you for inviting me. I will just take 3 points, one in India, one in UK and one in Canada, and that will pretty much give you a complete picture.
Jay.
Now, first you look at Delhi, for example. I am from Delhi. Now, Sikhs are a minority there, like 2.5%. And the worst excesses against Sikhs happened in Delhi, right? So, if there was some Khalistan, it should happen in Delhi, where we are a minority, where, Delhi pogrom happened. But you see the Sikhs who are most against Khalistan, like me, there is Tajinder Pal Singh Bagga, then there is Jeet Jyot, a young guy, and we are all born after 84 as well. So it's not. But our understanding is that Hindu Sikhs were one. Even after that dark period of 84, we never faced any discrimination. So the terror that inflicted was on us, the death was because of this Khalistanis. That's why people should notice that the people who are most against Khalistan and standing up are actually Sikhs from Delhi. This they cannot explain the Khalistan. The second point is like from UK. Tekedar ji was also saying there is a guy, a Muslim guy. You maybe even know him, Wasik guy. He comes and you know what happened with him. So Wasik is speaking for years against Islamists in UK, and he's fine. But recently he spoke against Khalistan, and I don't know if you're following the news or not. But he had to go underground. He is now incommunicado, and after 24 hours, he had to appear on the office of this Khalsa head, Ravi Khalsa, and grovel for an apology. And you can see that he is kind of a hostage and terrified. So these Khalistanis are even worse than jihadis, and this is what they are doing in UK. So it doesn't matter whether you have the number or not, but they are such criminals, and they have inflicted such coercion and terror. And Wasik is a perfect example of this. That this is it, that no decent person can speak. And now, Anandji, the most important thing, this is all happening from Canada, and you know it, and I know it, and Justin Trudeau is doing it. So all these perversions that were happening in Canada, put this graffiti. Now this is so pathetic. It's like writing Sonam Gupta bewafa hai, or some high school student abusing his teacher in the bathroom. They are such idiots and desperate. But again, this befits the cultures of Canadian Khalistanis. And all this nonsense that is happening, celebrate terrorists, abuse Hindus, do this kind of... This is coming from Canada. And Justin Trudeau is coming next month. And Anand bhai, it is your responsibility and that he is grilled. Because he just gets up and, speaks some nonsense. Because the way I see it, all this poison is coming from Canada. And he should get a royal welcome here, Justin Trudeau. And he should be grilled what he is doing. And, this country is responsible for, the greatest act of aviation terror before 9/11. And, for all this terrorists and what is happening. And Canada is increasingly acting like, an enemy country. This was also what Captain Amrinder Singh said. And we should take them to task. And if the politicians cannot do our country, it's the responsibility of right-thinking people like journalists like you or, like people like me to, take them to task.
See, my biggest problem is, Puneet, that you cannot broad brush an entire community. The work of 4 cannot be representative of say 4 crore or 40 lakh. That's where the problem is. Now, is there a way within which the seniors within the community, the parents, the Akal Takht, SGPC, and the Gurudwaras which are there, can they do something within the community? Should the community also be a little more stricter and stringent in naming and shaming these elements, rather than bearing it quietly and being frustrated that कि पूरी सिक्की का नाम खराब हो रहा है, and then being also afraid कि हम कुछ बोलेंगे तो वो हमारे रेस्टोरेंट पे पत्थर फेंक देंगे, हमारी माओ बहनों बेटियों पर फिर वो कुछ कर देंगे. These are the problems. So how does one deal with it? Because like I said, that's why I said it's a double-edged sword. They are trying to develop a case or a situation where chit hum jeete pat tumhare.
No, Anandji, buzdili ki saza maut hai. So the thing is, if they are attacking your daughters and if they are attacking your flag, you have to fight back. There is no two way of it. And so that is, you have to see number one. Now SGPC, it is being heckled by Canadian Khalistanis. And I tell you what, like what they do with the right-thinking people. I give you a very pertinent example. Narendra Modi ji did, like of 24, like this Veer Bal Divas, celebrating, the martyrdom of younger sons of Guru Gobind Singh. And, again, because SGPC plays, a Pakistan type separate nationhood and Pakistan type, they started opposing it. They just have to oppose for a reason. And when the head of Patna Sahib Gurdwara, where Guru Gobind Singh was born, he supported it. Why are you opposing without any reason? It is something to welcome. You see the attack the SGPC and this Khalistanis from Canadian did to him, like you are a sellout or something like that. So SGPC and Canadian Khalistanis, they kind of like I think the Canadian Khalistanis heckle even the SGPC Khalistanis, which are just like bumbling idiots and don't know anything. But they oppose actually every right thinking say. If they say it, they just say like charge them from blasphemy or something like that. So you just start appeasing them, take it as a law and order issue, and deal with it. And this is what actually happened in Punjab. Like when the Punjab terrorism happened, this problem was mismanaged for a decade because everybody thinking, okay, we have to release. No, in the end, it was sorted. It's a law and order issue. And you deal with a criminal like a criminal. It doesn't matter if he's wearing a turban or not, because what you don't understand is, like if he's a Sikh and he's committing a crime, like, okay, this one person stood out, but when he's going back to the community, most of his victims are going to be Sikhs as well. Because he's not living in some sky. He's living in some neighborhood. So you deal with a criminal like a criminal. It doesn't matter whether he's wearing a turban or not.
No, fair point made. Jaswant Singh ji, Kuldeep ji and Puneet Sahni, thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for being very forthright in your views, because this was an important discussion or a conversation that we needed to have. Always a pleasure to speak with all of you. Thank you so much. Namaste. Quickly getting a move on, ladies and gentlemen, and throwing the spotlight back on the G20. Now, so if there are disruptors who want to derail India's growth story, then there are nations which will continue to push their expansionist ideology and also somewhere use platforms, multilateral flora and the build-up to that to try and create a certain level of psyops. Now, China is up to it yet again. Now, this is something which they are compelled to do. We must understand this, that from Mao Zedong till date, China or the CCP follows a blueprint that was laid out by Mao, and that had the palm and the five fingers, and that's where this map, no matter how many times the world condemns it, they will continue to do it because that's their mandate, that's what they're stated at. So eventually what will happen is that it will only be China claiming this. Nobody else is going to take that claim very seriously, just as Subramaniam Jaishankar ji very clearly said that your map is not going to distort the truth, and you can put whatever maps you want to put, but the reality is different. Arunachal Pradesh remains an integral part of Bharat. Taiwan is an independent entity. Tibet is occupied territory, and East Turkestan is going through a certain level of internation and a certain level of social assimilation, which is bordering on demographic genocide as claimed by many. So all of these aspects now stand highlighted. Now they have no basis for these because it is all the CCP and the PLA's perception. So let's try and understand what top government sources are telling CNN News 18. Our group editor security Manoj Gupta getting us these details. Arunachal Pradesh is an integral part of India. China resorting to propaganda ahead of G20. Map released after the BRICS meet exposes this entire double speak. So the timing is also being pointed out. After BRICS, before G20. Expansionist China occupying territories illegally. Xi Jinping facing backlash over the Uyghur-Tibet issue. And many are saying this is also an attempt to try and deflect the entire economic crisis that China is going through, the worst ever because of their zero COVID policy that's blown straight into Xi Jinping's face. Frankly, ladies and gentlemen, they're tanking at various levels financially and economically. Meanwhile, let's try and look at the occupied territories that that China is actually forcibly sitting on, territory that does not belong to it. It's a sovereign territory of other nations. Starting with Aksai Chin illegally occupies 38,000 square kilometers. Shaksgam Valley illegally occupies 5,180 square kilometers. In Nepal, survey department said China occupying land in 7 districts of Nepal. In Bhutan, disputes on eastern, central and western sectors. In Vietnam, China claims jurisdiction over parts of the South China Sea, much to the consternation of those nations there, Vietnam, Philippines and Cambodia and some of the other nations. Taiwan claims it's a part of China, a breakaway province which has its own independent government and does not identify with the CCP at all. Japan claims Senkaku Islands under Chinese control. South China Sea claims the whole region as its own. It believes all of that is its perception. This palm and five finger strategy, this theory was when Mao Zedong had outlined it, and Chinese communist leaders' perception that Tibet is the palm and the Himalayan regions, Ladakh, Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan and Arunachal Pradesh are the five fingers. And by invading Tibet in 1949, China asserted Tibet as a treasure of its strategic asset and has now been targeting all the other five fingers. So we're sitting on the palm, we've got the palm, we need the other five fingers. So that is Sikkim, Nepal, Ladakh, Arunachal as it was and of course Bhutan. So that's what it is angling for. Now we've got news coming through, courtesy Manoj Gupta, our group editor security. Here on the right stand and on CNN News 18, we are given to understand China's provocation is a result of frustration within the CCP. China is on the verge of collapse on all sides, and provocation is seen as an attempt to divert attention from the economic crisis. And according to sources close to the Tibetan government in exile, China is facing huge internal crisis after COVID, and their zero COVID policy has backfired. The Tibetan government in exile, their source is saying, and this is what they are saying, and it perhaps echoes the letter that the UN had written in November 2022. I have got a copy of that letter, 17-page letter. Let's go across to Dawa Sering, Tibetan MP. He's the MP of the Tibetan Parliament in exile. We have Professor Brahma Chelani with us, Strategic Affairs expert, and Professor Victor Gao, Vice President, Center for China and Globalization and Chair Professor at the Suzhou University. But Dawa Sering ji, my first question to you, as I say namaste to all of you. Thank you for joining us here. My first question, China has released this map where it is showing Arunachal, Aksai Chin and parts of Taiwan as Chinese territory. How do you see this move of expansionist China? They've done a lot with Tibet also. I'll come to that in a bit. Yes, Dawaji.
Okay, the releasing of such a map by the China is just provocating the Indian and other neighboring countries. So this kind of activity has been doing by the China for last 70 years, since the Chinese Communist Party is inception. They've been doing all this, this kind of things for last 70 years. So there's no meaning for issuing or releasing such kind of map because the reason beyond is that there was no any border between India and China before 1959. That so-called border, the Indian-China border, is become after the occupation of Tibet in 1959. So that is totally meaningless. They have no right. It's totally illegal and condemnable. That they have no right to say claim such territory belongs to them.
You've been in exile for years together. China's claim over Tibet, the three regions, Utsang, Kham and Amdo. Now, they are largely trying to restrict even the Tibetan autonomous region towards just central Tibet. That's Utsang, Kham and Amdo. What happens to it? So, how would you react to that?
Yeah, definitely. Because in the world, many powerful come up. Even the Russian been break out in 1991. So anything can be happen. No permanent. The nature of the world is impermanent. So impermanency is with everyone is not possible. Is permanent. Is not. China has no exception or exception of impermanency. So impermanency on the world is everyone has a same. So today China is occupying the Tibet and other its neighboring countries. So but there will be definitely changes, and we regard. I believe that China has to be negotiate or has to be agree with the help of Indian government and people, because Indian and also because of the Dalai Lama, the changes will come very soon in coming near future.
Right. Now, before I go to Brahmachalani and Professor Victor Gao, I have a copy of this letter dated 11th of November 2022. So last year, November. And I'm just reading this passage before I go back to Dawa Sering. It says, in this connection, we would like to bring to the attention of Your Excellency's government information we have received concerning what appears to amount to a policy of acculturation and assimilation of Tibetan culture into the dominant Han Chinese majority through a series of oppressive actions against the Tibetan educational, religious and linguistic institutions in contradiction with the right to freedom of religion and belief and right to education and cultural rights of the Tibetan people. Concerns about the Tibetan language, culture and education and the situation of those who defend them have been subject to previous communications from the special procedures since 2010. Now this is the letter that's been set as part of the mandates of the Special Rapporteur on minority issues in the field of cultural rights. Now Dawa Seringji, are they trying to wipe out Tibetan culture altogether? That's what this points to, this letter. Can you explain? How are they trying to do it?
No, I might expect expectations, or I hope, I request to all the peace-loving countries, particularly Indian government and the South Asian countries who are the major sufferer of the Chinese expansion, should stand up, and with this, American and all the loving countries who believes in a democracy and also in the peace, they should stand up against the Chinese expansionist policy and culture genociding and also violation of human rights in everywhere. The Chinese violating human rights in many countries.
Right. With Dawa Seringji, please stay with us. Professor Victor Gao and Brahma Chalani bringing you into the discussion. Professor Victor Gao, the other day you were here with me on my show and you said you would like to work together with nations. This was around BRICS. And today you release the map. When I say you, the CCP releases a map again, which is claiming territory that does not belong to it.
Tell me which part of the territory you think it does not belong to China and is included in the map. I see the map.
Well, Bhutan is an independent nation. Arunachal is an integral part of India. Ladakh is an integral part of India. Tibet is an autonomous region which is occupied territory. Taiwan is an independent nation.
Okay. Taiwan is part of China. It's carved in stone. If you read the Cairo Declaration and the Potsdam Proclamation, which formed the pillar of the Japanese unconditional surrender in 1945. So if you cannot with this, then you need to read history. Now, for Arunachal Pradesh,
Arunachal is an integral part of India. It's carved in stone in our constitution, sir. So what is the China? What are the Chinese doing? It's carved in our constitution since 1947, sir.
Listen.
Arunachal is an integral part of India. Ladakh is an integral part of India. So it's carved in stone in our constitution, sir.
Do you want me to
yes,
speak,
sir,
or you just want to keep talking? Yes,
please go ahead. Now I will not interrupt you.
China has never recognized the McMahon line, which sometimes the Indian government claims to be the boundary between China and India. China has never accepted that. The British colonial powers wanted to push this onto China, and they failed. I don't think India will ever succeed in pushing for the McMahon line becoming the border between China and India. There are indeed territorial disputes between China and India. That's why the two countries need to sit down and talk about it in peace and diplomacy. And eventually, we need to find a peaceful solution of the territorial disputes between China and India. There are three disputes, one in the eastern part, one in the central part, and then the third one in the western part. All these three territorial disputes between China and India need to be seriously negotiated and eventually settled in peace. Before then, if India says Arunachal Pradesh is India's, then you test the will of the Chinese nation, because you can never impose the McMahon line as the border between China and India. We need to talk about it.
Sure. Yeah, true, absolutely, sir. Then let's go back to the 1842 Treaty of Chushul, which puts China's existence beyond the boundaries of Tibet, an occupied territory where the Chinese PLA walked in forcibly and occupied that territory that does not belong to the Chinese at all. So, if you go back to the 1842 Treaty of Chushul, it's China that has to go back at least 2,500 to 3,000 kilometers back to where its actual borders are, and let's read out the borders accordingly. So, Brahma Chalani ji, this is China's willfulness. If it continues to say its perception is right and whatever else is wrong, then there will never be a solution and there will never be trust.
Well, first, India and China have been trying to negotiate a border settlement for more than 40 years now. This is the longest negotiating process between any two countries over territorial disputes. And absolutely no progress has been made because China remains intransigent. But I think this latest cartographic aggression has to be seen in a bigger light, in a bigger picture. China pursues officially what is known as the three warfares doctrine. The three warfares doctrine blurs the line between war and peace. It is a smokeless war, as the CCP calls it. And this cartographic aggression very much illustrates China's smokeless war. It uses all tools to push its claims, whether covertly or overtly. It's using all means possible to pursue its expansionism. The second thing that we need to keep in mind is that the CCP is not a force for peace, it's a force for war. It's a force that has pursued non-stop expansionism right from the time it grabbed power in 1949. And Xi Jinping is working to complete Mao's expansionist vision.
Yes.
Mao's China annexed Xinjiang and Tibet. The occupation of Xinjiang and Tibet more than doubled China's territory and made it the world's fourth largest country by area. And since then, as you know, this concept of Tibet being supposedly China's right palm, and that there are 5 fingers to this palm that need to be liberated, that expansionist vision of Mao is very much driving Xi Jinping's policy. The fact that this map has been released right after the big summit where Modi and Xi Jinping met, and just before Xi Jinping comes to New Delhi for the G20 summit, goes to show that the CCP is committed to expansionism. The fact that even tiny Bhutan is one of the smallest countries in the world, and if you look at this map, they have shown 11% of Bhutanese territory in China, of Bhutan's territory.
Yes.
I mean, how shameless can a country be? One of the largest countries in the world, showing through a map that 11% of a tiny country is part of its territory. This really underlines China's unbridled expansionism.
Sir, you have also tweeted this. Victor Gao, how are you going to have any kind of cooperation, collaboration if, as Brahmachalani has put out on X, that land and sea borders nearly 17 nations, your neighbors, you've got disputes with? So this is nothing but the expansion blueprint of Mao. That is the CCP.
Allow me to make a
CCP.
point.
So that means.
Allow me to.
So yes, please. So was there no China or no consideration of China outside of the CCP's history?
No,
yes,
allow me to make a point. With due respect to the distinguished Indian panelist, I hope he will read history and study history. Why? China has altogether 14 land neighboring countries. China signed the border treaty with 12 of them. There are only 2 countries China has not signed the land border treaty: India and Bhutan, which is under subjugation of India. It is time for China and India and China and Bhutan to sign the land border treaties. China has signed the land border treaty with all the other 12 land bordering countries. This is the fact. And I hope the Indian distinguished panelist will not disagree with me, because if he disagrees with me, he disagrees with truth. And he is failing you in not doing his homework.
No,
That's
but
number one.
You have tried. You have signed these treaties, but how many of them have you honored?
Chinese territory since the 13th century. Come on, read history. Xinjiang has been Chinese
Tibet,
territory since around 2000 years ago.
No, sir, these used to be Chinese territory. These
If
used to
you
be
say
Chinese
China
territory.
is
These used to be Chinese.
expansionist, China
As
should
much
have
as the
been New
16th and the
Delhi.
17th
Come on.
century, the area that PLA sits on today was an integral part of Indian territory or Bharat. It was, even Hyun Sang has now called this region, which is this was all
I just
part
hope we will
of what
read
he
history
said. The
as it
people of
is, rather
Intu.
than come up
This was the
with
people of Intu.
prejudice.
No, please see, in it there are Shiva temples and Sharda Lipi examples in what you are calling new territory or East Turkestan, after which Islam came there. 1842 Treaty of Chusul very clearly defines where the Ming dynasty or the China's border should be, what should be Tibet, and thereafter the Dogras and the Kashmiris and that entire region is very clear done. It was done under Raja Ranjit Singh. So there are many aspects which have to be understood, which have also to be, you can't just go back to a history which is 12th century, sir, in the 16th and the 17th century, or even recent, even before that. India was far greater, sir. India was far greater. So what? So India should put out its map as with all of Bhutan, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and even parts of Afghanistan, and also large parts of Tibet and all part of India, and we will put that map and say, oh, we used to be like this in the 19th century, so this is who we are. Sir, realities are different. So one part is that China will find itself. China will be increasingly isolated, and the more you try and expand, the deeper, the more you'll burn holes in your pocket. I think that's a reality which everybody has to wake up to within the CCP establishment. I am way over time. I have to thank all our guests. Thank you very much. We are compelled to take a break, sir. We'll take this conversation forward in the coming days, Professor Victor Gao. I promise you. But I have run out of time right now. We're going to take a very short break. Stay with us. And it's a very important observation on Article 35A when we come back. It was made in the Honorable Supreme Court.
LIC.
Abhishek, now when it comes to this, can we also expect India to respond, or is it likely that this will be ignored?
You know, there will be, of course, a response, but there has been always a standard reply that Chinese claims does not mean that these lands will belong to Chinese side, because de facto position is that in Arunachal Pradesh there is a Indian government, there is Indian territory, there are religious people of Indian nationality living. The territorial claim and exploration of all the revenues are being deposited in the Indian treasury. So clearly, those territory belongs to India, no matter how much claims China does, and no matter how many villages China tries to change names of. But it also tells the kind of aggressive posting that China will continue to have on the issues of territorial claims in Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai Chin and other parts of other sides of its border. And this is a concern, because when you talk about rules-based order, when you talk about respect to sovereignty and territorial integrity of other nations, that clearly China is a nation which does not want to do that. It does not want a mutual respect for the boundaries and the sovereign territory of each other, and it wants to create a kind of dispute over the territory which we have already been seeing in what is happening in Western Ladakh. That has also been the reason why China-India bilateral ties have gone downwards. And we were hoping that after the meeting of Prime Minister Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Africa's Johannesburg, there would be some improvement in the bilateral ties. But with the latest map that also shows Arunachal Pradesh as part of China, it doesn't look like China has been in mood of having a mutual respect or an improvement of bilateral ties with India.
Now, doesn't this also mean that the meeting, when it comes to the one that took place at the BRICS summit on the sidelines of it between China's President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, one very big important point that came out from that was the fact that Prime Minister Modi emphasized the fact that there will be no normal ties between the two nations until the situation at the border is normal. Now, China releasing this map after that, how exactly does this bode for ties between the two nations?
You see, Aisha, we are talking about in Western Ladakh, we are talking about a territory which was still not very marked well. It was, both the sides have some sort of agreement or some sort of agreement that there were some perception, some difference of perception, because the actual line of control has not been marked ever since the independence of India. But in the case of Arunachal Pradesh, there is no difference of perception. It is clearly a land that belongs to India, and India has a sovereign right over it. and China, with the repeated claims on certain parts of Arunachal Pradesh and saying that it is an extended territory of South Tibet, is something that it wants to keep dispute alive, so that in future, maybe 50 years down the line, it can always show that okay, this land has never been a sovereign territory of India, and it was always a disputed land. So these disputes are they are alive, and they are made to be alive always by the Chinese side in order to have a claim in the future. So this is what the Chinese statecraft has been, and this is what they are trying to do in Ladakh also, where they have kind of sat on position where the common petroleum points were, and now they would probably in few years down the line they would claim that these territory already belong to China, and now you can negotiate for the petroleum rights for the territories further from it. So this is how the Chinese nibbling theory of territory of other nations has been, and probably this time also with the latest map that China has released, they are trying to do that. But probably this is not going to go down well, and we can assume that there will be a reaction from the Indian side or the Ministry of External Affairs of the issue of China's latest map that shows Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh as part of its own territory.
Now, on Monday, China officially released the 2023 edition of its standard map, incorporating the disputed areas, including its claims over Arunachal Pradesh, Aksai Chin region, Taiwan, and the disputed South China Sea. India has repeatedly said that the state of Arunachal Pradesh has always been and will always be an integral part of the country. Now remember, this also follows recent attempts by China to rename India's Arunachal Pradesh, specifically particular areas within it. Now this is about a new map that China has also released, and we're also showing you the visuals of this new map that's been released by China, which is again talking about different territorial claims that China claims to have. But remember, this also comes in the backdrop of the fact that China has been trying to rename parts of Arunachal Pradesh, but India remains strong and firm on its stand with the fact that Arunachal Pradesh will be and always will be an integral part of the country. Now we're crossing over to CNN News 18's Foreign Affairs correspondent Abhishek Jha, who's joining us live to get us more details on this. Abhishek, tell us more about the fact that China's released this map. Tell us more about the areas that they've included in it. What exactly can our viewers understand from this new map?
So this is like an annual affair that Chinese ministry does, and they come out with certain territorial map of China so that they can have geographical exploration of those locations.
Back on the right stand with this latest observation, even as the hearing is on abrogation of Article 370, the Honorable Supreme Court, especially the Chief Justice, making a very interesting observation that the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir, erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, is not above the Constitution of India, and that 35A deprived people of Jammu and Kashmir of very critical, basic, fundamental rights as accorded by the Constitution of Bharat. Let's go straight across to two gentlemen who are not just good friends, but they have been following this for a long time. Ishkaran Bhandari with us and Rajiv Pandey with us. Rajiv Pandey, if I recollect, more than a decade ago, around 2010, you were one of the first people to challenge 35A. And Ishkaran has been very vocal about the abrogation and the need for abrogation. So Rajiv, let's start with you and then I'll bring in Ishkaran. Yes, Rajiv.
Anand, in 2014, for West Park refugees, we had filed first petition in Honorable Supreme Court of India challenging the Article 35 capital A. And what we were trying to argue and the notice were issued, today now that has fallen from the bench of Honorable Constitution bench of Honorable Supreme Court of India. You know, nobody would have imagined that what kind of plight they were facing. The people who came from West Park, Pakistan or other people. The biggest atrocities was on the people, 50% of the population of Jammu and Kashmir. There was a discrimination between men and women. There was a discrimination between the people who have come from West Pakistan. You know, there are two West Pakistani Prime Minister in this country, one Deputy Prime Minister of this country. But these people have no right to vote in Vidhan Sabha. They had no right to vote in municipal election and panchayat elections. So, you know, these things were being challenged. I am very happy that people have challenged this issue, the abrogation of Article 370, the Constitutional Order 272, which was passed by Honorable Home Minister and Prime Minister of this country, that people should know what was the atrocities committed by the people of this, by the leaders of this country, particularly the Congress party and the parties who were ruling Jammu and Kashmir, like National Conference. People were not aware. They were thinking really Baba Sahib Ambedkar has given a special provision. Now it is being discussed that Article 370, it was a temporary provision. Now we are not saying that. Earlier we were saying. Now this is being discussed before the Constitution bench, and even the people who are representing the top lawyers, the people who are opposing abrogation, they are also saying JK is integral part and this is under Article 1. Article 3 applies. Everything is there. So Anand, I am very happy that finally this issue, no doubt, this BJP government has already done away with Article 35 capital A and 370. But I am very happy, Anand, that this is being discussed by the people at large. Countries should know what has happened between 1947 to 57. This is very important era for the integration of Jammu and Kashmir. But people were just thinking about this.
Correct.
So I am very happy. Very frankly, I can say I am very happy.
You gentlemen have access to the courtrooms and also perhaps to the judges. Interestingly, you must ask them that the copy of the constitution which is there in the Supreme Court, does it have even 35A there, Ishkaran? Because I'm given to understand as an anecdote that the chief justices of that time back in 2010, 11, 12 tried to look for it and they couldn't find it there. They said, ये कौन सा article है जो यहाँ पे नहीं है इस संविधान में?
It's a question to Anand. I wrote an article,
Yes,
I wrote an editorial in 2018 listing out why 35A and 370 has to go. And frankly, the current Chief Justice is a strong votary for live streaming and technology. And people in real time now can hear from his own mouth what are the observations he's making. Because please understand what was happening in the guise of 35A. A woman would marry outside Jammu Kashmir and she would lose her right to property. So either she can have a marriage of her choice or she can have her father's hard-earned property to herself. This was prevailing not in 1850. This was not prevailing in 1920. This was prevailing till 2019. That is not by a five-star girl, leave alone individual people. So what is happening? The actual suffering was happening to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, was happening to the national interest. Because creating a law like this was in effect keeping the ideology of partition alive, where you said a land has special status because it is dominated by a special religion. Baba, uske upar to partition ho chuka hai na, where people said that people are incapable of living together and those who are incapable of living together want their own piece of land. But why that guise in our constitution? And in fact, it was argued that the first Prime Minister was in favor of people not being able to buy property there. The first Prime Minister obviously was in favor. That is why this sort of a presidential order could be brought in. And by the time the concentration of power happened, we are having this debate on Delhi, whether services should be with the government or the first Prime Minister removed the post of the Chief Minister of Delhi itself. So that was the situation in 1950s, where a temporary provision was solidified, almost made permanent, till this government had the opportunity and frankly the courage to do over it. But the most important part is the government has done it. But because of this court hearing, each and every citizen of this country knows how this law was depriving women of sanitation workers, people belonging to scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and that is the legacy of 370 and 35A.
No, very well said. But
Anand,
Rajiv Pandey, 2014, there was wasn't there a case also wherein the inheritance rights were given, but even then the courts of our country, the top court of our country, did not take suo moto cognizance about this 35A article, which was bad in law, which was a footnote.
Anand, even the property rights were given by a struggle of the people. First it was fought in the High Court and then it was fought in the Supreme Court of India. I am telling you, in this country, that appeasement politics, if you read Article 370 and 35A, capital A, you can easily understand what kind of appeasement politics was going on. In 1964, there was a parliamentary debate in which every party agreed that today we will remove this Article 35 and 370. But little later, after some time, they started talking about, this cannot be done. And
I think I've lost Rajiv Pandey there, Rajiv's audio there. Rajiv, are you back with us? No. Quick final word. I've just got about 45 seconds on the clock, Ishkaran. Do you believe that those who have challenged the abrogation of Article 370 have actually shot themselves in the foot? Because a large part of this country will now know what their misdoings were all this while. Abhi tak to unko pata nahi tha.
Yes. Anand, I am extremely happy that they have challenged it, because now it will form, the judgment would come. It will not be one side or the other side saying it. The judgment will document how 35A and 370 was operating in taking away the fundamental rights, the basic rights of people. Right to education is not applicable to Jammu and Kashmir. So the number of rights taken away is so huge that it is good, it will be documented now.
We'll follow this. We'll follow this carefully and closely. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time. Winding up the right stand on that note. Zaka Reddy with Brass Tacks.
Good evening. Welcome to Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. In a big move, the Modi government today reduced the price of LPG cylinders by 200 rupees. So cylinders which cost 1100 rupees will now only cost 900. And for those who are eligible under the Ujjwala scheme, there's a further reduction of another 200 rupees. So which means if you are one of the 10 crore beneficiaries under the Ujjwala scheme, you will now pay only 700 rupees per cylinder as opposed to the 1100 rupees that it is currently in the market. Now, the opposition is saying that this betrays a sense of nervousness because the ruling BJP got a big jolt in the Karnataka election.